Okay, everybody, I appreciate everybody being here this morning, and we're going to get just started. Joe Gibbs, Kyle Busch. We're going to just start with some opening remarks. Joe?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say that hopefully we're able to convey our feelings this morning in the right way. It's really important to us. I want to say, first of all, how proud I am of our sponsors. When you think about Mars, Interstate, Toyota, we got great partners. And in particular, this morning, I want to mention that Mars is one of the premier companies in America. They've been 19 years in racing, great supporters of racing. They've been great partners for us. And the 4 years we've been together, we've developed strong relationships and I think a great partnership. The actions last week don't reflect Mars's values. And as a consequence, they've asked Kyle not to drive the M&M's car in 2011. We'll come back in 2012, and that's important. I made a mistake there. That's for the two races this year. Kyle wouldn't drive the M&M's car. Going forward next year, we're all set and plan to have a long future in racing. The number 18 will not have the Mars paint scheme for these next two races. We support this decision with the race team, and we're also proud of Interstate Batteries. As you all know, they've been our founding sponsor, been with us for 20 years, and they will take over the paint scheme on the car for the next two races here. And I really appreciate also the way Mars and Interstate have worked together in a partnership for these last 4 years. It's been a great partnership, and I appreciate the way they work together. Kyle's penalties are going to be substantial. If you think about it, NASCAR taking him out of the car last week, there's also a fine associated with that. But the biggest thing for everybody on the 18 car was we went from 7th in points in the chase to 11th. That's a huge deal. I know Kyle, all of us were excited about getting back in the top 5, and that'll probably take this away from us, and we understand that, but I'm just emphasizing that that was a big deal for us. We understood that, but it was a big deal. We also have other actions that are going to be in place. There'll be other financial penalties and stuff that we're working through, and we'll continue to do that as we go forward through this process. I think for me personally, I just want to make the point that when you're put in a situation like this, you really can make one or two decisions. I think the one would have been devastating, I think really discouraging for everybody associated with it, Kyle, everybody around him, and for the sport. What I've chosen to do, I want to support Kyle, and I feel like that this could have a positive impact on Kyle, and I'm committed to him as a person. I like him. We've gone through a lot together, and as far as us and Joe Gibbs Racing, we're looking forward to a long relationship. That's pretty much what I'd like to say.
Yeah, Kyle.
Yeah, first of all, obviously this has been quite a trying week for myself and my wife and everybody at M&M's, Joe Gibbs Racing, Kyle Busch Motorsports, Interstate Batteries, all of the above. So for me, I'm utmost apologetic to everybody that's been having to go through this situation. And there's no one to blame but myself. So I'm here today to basically say that, I apologize to everybody involved in this whole ordeal. Joe has been a huge supporter of mine through all of this, and I can't say enough about him, all the folks at JGR, all the guys on my M&M's team, and we're here to say that we want to learn from this. We want to move on, and certainly there's some remorse from my side, and to be apologetic to the M&M's brand and all of those folks that have put their heart and soul into this NASCAR program for years, and we want to continue that relationship down the road. There's an opportunity for me to become a better person, to grow, to learn from this, and I'm looking forward to those days, and knowing that I'm sure I have lost some respect with my team, with my sponsors, with my peers, and I understand those consequences. I understand my actions last weekend were uncalled for, were disrespectful, and that I'm here to make sure that I can continue on in a positive manner and make it to where everybody believes in me from this week forward. So that's about it.
Okay, we can open it up to some questions. We got microphones here. Bill, Lee.
Lee Spencer, Fox Sports. Joe, when did all the decisions come down with Mars and M&M's? Because it just seemed back and forth all week. And what kind of demands did they put on Kyle going forward?
I think it was strictly a partnership, and you're right. It was there. This was a big process. There were a lot of things to go through, and I think it was a matter of just walking through them. I thought both of us, Mars and the race team, like I mentioned, a great partnership. There were a lot of things to consider, and I think it took a while for us to kind of walk through all that. I think we did it in a real partnership and a great way, and I think we reached the right conclusions. But it took us a while to do that.
Bruce Martin, SI.com. Kyle, just if you could describe how, since the incident on Friday, how much soul searching you've kind of had to do, and some of the steps that you want to take place to ensure that a situation like that never happens again.
Well, it's like I mentioned before, it's certainly been a trying week, and this has been a situation where I never could have dreamed could happen, and I don't wish it upon anybody. And so for me, certainly I've had a lot of time to sit and reflect and think and decide and look at what the future entails. And so for me, my future, I want to be with Joe Gibbs Racing. I want to be in NASCAR. I want to be driving, the M&M's Toyota. So for all of that to work out and to work together, certainly it's going to be, through a lot of my efforts and my efforts behaviorally. And so, I've got a strong path ahead that I'm excited about and looking forward to, and learning and growing. And understanding that, the ground that I've made this year has been awesome. And obviously there was a moment that took away from all of that. But I'm certainly not opposed to continuing that growth pattern.
I would like to add to that I watched Kyle. We've been, in the partnership here. And I'd say over the last year, I know from being there, the effort he's made. And I think Kyle, everything from his marriage to Sam and everything else that we've had a chance to go through and watch him, I really think he's, made great strides in a lot of ways. It's just, this is a shame that this, we took a step back here.
I think Nate, you had the mic?
Yeah, Nate Ryan, USA Today. Joe, you alluded to some consequences from Kyle from a financial perspective. Along those lines, are you offering a refund to Mars for the last 2 races of the season? And as a result, are you changing or reducing Kyle's compensation to accommodate that? And is Interstate, how are they going to be paying for these last races?
I think all of that is an internal thing that, we're not going to discuss. But I think, we've taken our appropriate actions there. We all talked it over, know what we're going to do. But it's not something I think, we need to discuss.
Michael Knight, Arizona Republic, for both Kyle and Joe. Are you confident that coming out of this experience that you can adjust your mental approach and what you do on the racetrack to still be a winning driver?
I think, for me personally, we expect Kyle, Kyle, we think is a great driver. I think he's gifted. And this situation is totally different than that. We're talking about an action or something here but when it comes to driving a race car, we want him to drive the race car. I know Mars does too. We want him to drive it the way he's capable of driving it. We think he's one of the gifted people when it comes to just being an athlete and doing the things he do, and we expect him to drive the car that way and be himself.
Yeah, I don't think there was any doubt that anybody was wanting me or saying that I needed to change on the racetrack. There's a fact that there's things that go on the racetrack that make you competitive, that give you that spirit, that will to win. And some days when a bad decision's made, it deters from that. So, obviously there's more behavioral issues than there is competitive issues, and that's what I think that's what we'll build on.
Shannon Spake, ESPN. Kyle, 2 questions. Have you had any contact with Ron Hornaday Jr. and or Kevin Harvick about this matter? And I'll have a follow-up after that.
I have had conversations with Ron Hornaday. I called him, I don't remember what day it was, but it was within a day or two of the incident. And so, yeah, we had a discussion, a conversation that, ended well. We hung up, and, I'm still invited over to the house to stay on the couch if I need, so that's good.
My second question is in relation to the penalty that Mars has implemented, your response from the other drivers in the garage. Obviously, we've seen some take to Twitter. What have you heard from some of those guys about this penalty?
You know what the great thing about Twitter is you can also turn it off. So I haven't been on. I haven't paid any attention.
Some of that was positive, though. Some of those comments were positive in your favor.
Well, that's great, and I do appreciate that. There's certainly it's a tough situation for me to be involved in, but there's no one to blame but myself. So for some people, some competitors out there that have stuck their head out there and have maybe been supportive of this whole deal, that's awesome. I can't say enough, but I do know that I do have friends out there on the racetrack. I do know that there's people on the racetrack that I can trust, that I can race around, that still do respect me. And there's a few others that maybe not, and certainly those are of those people when you're racing around them on the racetrack. So you're conscious of all of that. But any support that I've been getting this week has been tremendous because it like Joe said, it's given me a future and a bright future.
Let's go back, and then we'll come back up to Clay.
Kenny Bruce with SceneDaily.com. Joe, given M&M's position on the situation, why do you feel like Interstate was willing to step in and put their brand on the car this weekend? And also, were there any conversations between JGR and M&M's about possibly moving the sponsorship to another team?
No, there's been no discussion about, like we said, in 2012, I think Mars, Kyle, all of us at our race team want to be together. And moving forward, there's been no discussion about that. I think as far as Interstate, it was just one of those things where, in the discussions, they felt like it was something they would like to do, and it was nothing other than that. It was just as we discussed it as partners, with all 3 of us.
Okay, Reed Spencer, then we'll come to Clark.
Reed Spencer with Sporting News. For Coach first, one of the things that hasn't been addressed in the release yet is the report that Z-Line wanted Denny in the car for the last nationwide race. How does that affect Kyle going forward with Z-Line next year? And for Kyle, are you frankly surprised at the level of the backlash that has occurred from this, and do you think you understand why that occurred?
I think, first of all, on the Z-Line discussion, we kind of felt like as a race team, I take the responsibility for a lot of that because we were kind of wanting to go for the next 2 races, let Kyle focus on Cup. And so a lot of that came from the race team with Z-Line. And so in a lot of ways, a lot of those, questions and everything should have been, directed at us. We appreciate those guys. They've been awesome. So that was probably more of a race team decision. In talking with Kyle, too, we talked it over and said, hey, look, we'd like to spend the next 2 weeks because we knew there was going to be a lot of attention, and let him focus on Cup.
Yeah, and certainly, your question in regards to the backlash and the consequences and everything, understandably so. Yeah, there's been a lot of upset people, and that's to be understood for the actions that I made and I made a decision on. But like I said, it's certainly a way to learn from and to understand and to grow and to move on.
Claire B.
Claire B. Lang, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. For Kyle, was there a point that you actually thought that you would lose your job, your ride? Much of that was talked about. And was that actually a real possibility? And for Joe, how much does Kyle have to change? Obviously, what happened was uncalled for, but some like his edginess. Are we going to see a different Kyle Busch that has to change totally? And can he keep the edge?
What was the first part? I'm sorry, Claire. What was the first part?
Did you actually feel like you were going to lose that ride, and how did that feel? Was that a real possibility?
Yeah. Obviously, emotions run high, and I think emotions ran high on everyone this week, including myself, which obviously started the whole ordeal. And for me, when you sit back and reflect and think about everything, and you're sitting there on the sidelines on Saturday, you're sitting there watching your car race on Sunday, that's a huge deal. That's a huge disappointment to not only myself, but more importantly to my team. All these guys at Joe Gibbs Racing that had nothing to do with Friday night, I feel a tremendous amount of remorse for, and so I've got to gain their respect back. Was there a point in which I thought, do I have a ride? Of course there was. Yeah, I thought that. Was there a point in which Joe ever told me that, hey, we're looking at terminating this? No. Joe has been there and has stuck by my side and has held my arm through this whole deal. And I can't say enough about the man sitting next to me.
Basically for us, JD, myself, our whole management team, we were kind of there and kind of walked through this with Kyle. We saw him and Samantha and all the things that we went through at Texas and everything else. And I think that, I think we see that. It's an emotional thing. We know where his heart is. And, I think we were there to, realizing that we got a lot of people that count on us. And we wanted to walk through this with Kyle, and we feel like that our stand was, we think Kyle can be a special person and a special athlete. And we're committed, and like I said, we spent the last year kind of going through some things, and I think they've been where Kyle has really stepped up and matured in a lot of ways.
Okay. I think we're
Kyle, Tom,
starting to get up against it on time, but we're going to go back here and see if we can get a couple more in.
Kyle, Tom Jensen, Speed.com. Over the last 3 years with NASCAR Boys Have At It, there's been increasingly aggressive driving. Carl Edwards got put on his roof at Atlanta. Martinsville was like a war zone. Were you surprised at NASCAR's reaction, number one? And number two, do you think for all the drivers there needs to be a clearer definition or any definition of where the lines are for what's acceptable and what isn't on retaliation?
I wasn't surprised at NASCAR's reaction. I felt like it was a decision that they needed to make, and I respect that decision, and I took the consequences and the repercussions of that, and we're still dealing with them today, and we'll still deal with them for a while. There's no question. In regards to whether or not there's a clear, defined line, no, there's not. Will there ever be? No. I think this sport has been driven for so many years off that rule book and how to find the gray area. And the gray area with the crew chiefs, with car chiefs, with our body hangers back at the shop, trying to figure out exactly how far we can go. You go that far and you push the envelope, and sometimes you get slapped, and or maybe a little bit worse than that. And I think that we saw that this past weekend. And whether all the drivers want a clear, defined line, I don't know that we'll ever see that. So it's just, you got to be smarter. I certainly was not smart in my actions on Friday night, and I get that. And so for me, the decision needs to be different come next time around in the heat of the moment. And sometimes, it's like, when you're that close to fire, are you just going to stay warm, or are you going to get burned by it? And obviously, this week I definitely got burned by my own fire.
Okay, back to Jim back there, and then David.
Jim Uttershaw, Observer. Quick question for Joe, a quick question for Kyle. Joe, aside from next week's race at Homestead, next season, does anything that's transpired from this incident affect the number or the ability of Kyle to drive in nationwide and truck races next season?
I think as far as Kyle's schedule is something we've talked about, and we're going to continue to work our way through that. Kyle has 40-something people working over there. We have a large number of our race team is devoted to nationwide. And so I think that's something that we'll just continue to work through. That's one of the issues we talked about that we'll continue to look at and discuss and work through with Kyle.
And Kyle, I know you said you haven't been following Twitter, but there is a large segment of your fans who have been supportive of you during this incident. Just your thoughts on how what you think you have to do to kind of when you talk to them in the coming weeks or see them at how do you kind of reconnect with your fans after this incident?
That's something else that may be in the process down the line on how to reconnect with the fans and get have them have a better understanding of who I am. But certainly I do appreciate any of the fan support that has been out there. I hope people, whether it be Twitter or wherever, do recognize that it's not in my best mindset to be on there reading all whether they're positive or negative comments. So for me, I appreciate my fan base, and I know that they're out there. I know that there's whether it's small or whether it's large, there's a legion of fans that do support Kyle Busch and do support M&M's, Interstate Batteries, Toyota, Joe Gibbs Racing, all the folks in regards to all that. So, for me, it's something that, I've come into the sport when I was 18 years old. At 16, got booted, came back when I was 18. And, it's been a struggle for me since that day. And certainly I've gained a bit of a fan base, and I've upset some people in this past week, sure. But I'm here to do the best I can of my ability with the leadership of Joe and JD that we've already shown through this year, and we'll continue to show in the future that, we want to be around here for a long time.
Okay, I'm afraid we're up against time here, David. You got
David Newton, ESPN.com. This for Joe. Kind of three parts here. First, you guys had contacted Amarillo about possibly taking Kyle's place. Right. How close were you to actually pulling him out of the Cup car? Second, will anger management be a part of his rehab, if you want to call it, like you did with Tony years ago?
Yeah.
And third, image conscious. Does this give another reason on how big image is in this sport and all sports?
Right. Yeah, and we pride ourselves on that. We want to have the right image, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we keep that or reinstate that or whatever we got to do. As far as Eric goes, there were so many things going on at the first part of the week and on the weekend about how far the suspension from NASCAR was going to go to the trucks have to leave early because they're going all the way to Phoenix, and all the preparations you had to make. There were a lot of moving parts, and so as a part of that, we were trying to anticipate any and everything, and so we just simply said to Eric to check with him to see if he would be available. But that never became a real possibility, and we're happy to be where we are here today. Yeah, I think that would be something we continue to work through, and one of the topics that, Kyle and ourselves and the race team and everybody will continue to work on, and we're going to set out to do whatever we think is best going forward.
Okay, I appreciate everybody's time. I know we're running into the next press conference, and we got to get Kyle prepared for practice. I think we'll step outside with Coach for a couple minutes if anybody has a follow-up for him. But otherwise, appreciate everybody coming out.
Thank you.